2 Peter 2:15, the Apostle Peter issues a warning about the false teachers, that were around in that time and infiltrating the church. And he says that they have left the straight way and wandered off to follow the way of Balaam, son of Bezer, who loved the wages of wickedness. He's wandered off the way, left the straight way to follow the way of Balaam. That's what these prophets were doing, who loved the wages of wickedness. Well, who was Balaam? Well, many of us know that Balaam was this character in the Old Testament in which the donkey spoke to him after beating the donkey, which is a crazy story. And if you believe that's impossible, well, think about it. If God can create the heavens and the earth, and create all the things that we see, I mean, what's it to him if he can make a donkey's talk, I suppose. But regardless, the way of Balaam, who loved the wages of wickedness. Well, what's the story of Balaam? Well, just really quickly, Balak, who was the king of Moab, wanted to pronounce a curse over Israel because he wanted to destroy Israel, even though Israel was not waging war against Moab. But he seen them as a threat, Balak did. And so he summons Balaam, who is a prophet of God, to say, hey, you hear from God. Why don't you come and speak a curse over the Israelites? And Balaam says, I can't curse whom the Lord has blessed. I can't do it. God has not authorized me to do it. Balaam even sought the Lord, and the Lord said, no, don't do it. So he gives that message back to Balak and says, I can't do it. Balak then goes on to say, well, there's got to be another way, right? I tell you what, I'm going to compensate you. I will reward you if you come and do this, right? He's laying it on thick now. He's tempting him further. Balaam responds back, look, even if you gave me all of the riches of, I can't do it. Whom God has blessed, I cannot curse. And so then Balak doesn't give up. Balak says, well, why don't we come over to this other place? We can sacrifice 7 rams and 7, I can't even remember what it was, some other animals, a number of animals. Let's present these sacrifices to God. Let's see what he has to say. And guess what? Balaam goes along with it. Balaam goes, well, all right, maybe God will change his mind, or maybe God will provide another way, right? In fact, Balaam was actually quite interested in doing this. He wanted to seek another way. He wanted to see if God would change his mind or if there was another way of doing this. Why? Because he wanted that reward, right, that the king was giving him. And 3 separate times they went up into a higher location and overlooked the Israelite camp, and where Balaam sought the Lord and sacrificed all of the stuff, only for God to say, look, God is not one to lie, right? I've blessed the Israelites. You can read all of this in Numbers 22, 23, 24. And so Balaam can only speak the truth that God had shown him. It's quite remarkable. So where does it all go wrong? Well, you find out a little later in Numbers 31, after we actually backtrack a little bit in Numbers 25, it says that the Israel men began to indulge in sexual immorality with the Moabite women who invited them to the sacrifices of their gods. So the Moabite women started seducing the Israelite men to have unsanctioned sexual relations, adultery, adulterous relationships with the Moabites. Okay, so this is really bad. And it says that the people ate the sacrificial meal and bowed down before these false gods. So Israel yoked themselves to the Baal of Peor, and the Lord's anger burned against them. So this happens in Numbers 25, right after Balaam's failed to curse the Israelites on the behalf of King Balak. Okay, so what does this have to do with Balaam? Well, you fast forward to Numbers 31, and it says that this was all Balaam's idea. Okay, Balaam was the one who suggested to the women of Moab, look, if we can't defeat them by pronouncing a curse over them, perhaps all you women go and seduce them, all right? Go and prostitute yourselves before these people of Israel so we can get them distracted with this immorality, and then we can defeat them. Interesting. This is what happened. This is who Balaam was. Why? Because he was seduced by the paycheck, by the reward. God's people weren't going to be defeated by some outside force. They weren't. God was for them. Bible says if God is for you, who could be against you, right? God was with them. They're God's people. But guess what? They could be defeated from within if they indulged in their own sin and all these terrible things. And sexual immorality has undone many godly people. Pastors, ministers, the most godly among us have fallen because of these types of sinful behaviors. And so they gave into the temptation. But it was Balaam, it was his idea to do this because, again, he was seduced by the paycheck. Friends, you know what? Let us not be seduced by anything of this world. Sometimes there's a lot of temptations that come our way. whether it's to financial gain or some sexual pleasure or something else. It could be all kinds of things that tempt us from going away from God's ways in our lives. Let's recognize the temptation for what it is. God has better for us, okay? Let's not be pulled astray by like in the ways of Balaam, like Peter warns us. And all throughout the New Testament, Balaam is mentioned in a number of places, and it's always as a warning towards us that we don't get off path. You know, the donkey started talking to Balaam on that road that day. Why? Because he saw the angel of the Lord standing there with his sword drawn, right? And the angel was there to warn Balaam, you're going off track. You're getting far off. Hold up. You need to take heed of what you're doing. Even though at that time, Balaam was seemingly doing the right thing. He hadn't really done anything wrong yet, but there was stuff dealing in his heart. God already seen that. He sent an angel to warn him. Perhaps he's sending an angel to you and I here today to warn us. Don't get off track. Stay on there with God. Don't be tempted. Don't give in to the temptation of the things around us. God is your rewarder. You don't want a reward of man. You want God's reward in your life. Thanks for watching today. Hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time.